Welcome, everyone. Happy Mother's Day to each and every one of you, even the fathers or the father figures, mother figures out there. I am just really happy to be here today, standing in front of you as a mother myself. And I wanted to go into a little story. Now, once upon a time, there was this girl who lived the perfect life with the perfect parents and lived in a perfect land with no war, famine, disease, or drama. Daily, her mother would give her words of affirmation. Her father would adorn her with the most stylish of clothes, and she was fed the most lavish meals that one could ever want. She grew up, married a handsome person, they had kids, blah, 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 the end. We all know that that probably isn't the story that most of us grew up with. Now, some of you may have grown up in households with these loving parents, these giving parents, who really did just unconditionally showed up in your lives. And for the rest of us, we had parents who were hurt people, whether they knew it or not. Our childhood memories may not be so rose-colored. And our childhood memories are really the ones that we're bringing into our now times. Now, last year, I told the story on Mother's Day of my mischievous childhood, how the Kelly kids ran wild in the neighborhood in Chicago and set fire to the place and everything else. And I do admit that I did skim on some of the details, but that was to spare you all on the summons that appearing in court to testify against me. So I certainly do thank you for keeping that in mind. But I digress certainly because this is about Mother's Day, and I want to keep the attention on that specialness of today and not the adventures of parenting gone wrong. I remember that hearing that most of us are just doing the best that we can with the tools that we have. And that is true. Most of us don't just wake up, and somebody just told me this other day, wake up and say, you know what, today I'm just going to be the worst possible version of myself. That's not something that usually crosses the normal, let's say, intellect when we awaken in the morning. We have dreams and hopes and aspirations and just things that we just look forward to, hopefully. Some of us may be dreading the day, but either way, we try to move forward with our best foot in front of us, doing those things that we believe will provide more love, more peace, more comfort. Now, we do all have unique childhood experiences, and the reason why I want to go off of these childhood experiences because it leads us into adulthood, and then it's going to lead us right back to our parents and maybe our grandparents and this ancestral thing that's been happening generation after generation, and using this time to hopefully break those ties that bind us to any type of trauma so we can finally free ourselves to live our best lives. Because life is for the living. And if in your heart there is anger, resentment, or hate, you are dying. Life is for those and perpetuates itself off the heartbeat of God. And God is life. Now, I do admit that once in a while, the 3-year-old Johnny, whoever that 3-year-old Johnny might show up and aggravates the 3-year-old Johanna. That's just some of the trauma that I deal with. And we experience this as adults, the difficulty of this childhood. So no matter who we're dealing with, they can show up as a version of themselves that is far, let's say, sophomoric for who they really are in this stage of their life. When something happens to us as a child, we process it internally and intellectually at the age it occurs. So if something happens to you, a trauma, at 5 years old, you are processing it internally with all the knowledge and skills and everything else that you have of a 5-year-old. And it lays dormant, trapped inside of you. energetically, spiritually, at the age in which it occurs. So it's just there. And its memories and its responses, when they get trapped, it remains there, either to be triggered or to be healed. And the moment that something rises up within you, you say, oh, they triggered me. Then realize that that is actually your point of power. That is the point in which you are called to heal that aspect of yourself that doesn't show up in love, that has been traumatized earlier. And often our responses to a current situation are not what's actually happening in the moment. Rather, it's, like I said, this old energy either coming up to be released or reinforced. But you have the power in that. And central adult figures in our lives, they come into adulthood with their own memories and their own stored energy. Eventually, many of them become parents with their own unhealed energy. And that's where things get kind of tricky and sticky, because when we start having children and we have unresolved issues from our own childhood, then it leaves us in the spot of maybe passing that on to the next generation. Now, each one of us is given a toolbox, a medicine cabinet, really, from our parents. And most importantly, these central figures in our lives, they instill most of what we know, a lot of the coping mechanisms and everything else early on in life. And so these tools are eventually what we would use to later on have adult relationships, in being parents, in being friends, in being great coworkers, hopefully. But without realizing, parents may unknowingly give their child a broken hammer, a worn screwdriver in this toolbox, or rusty nails, thinking because it is similar components of a working tool that it will do the job. But as we all know, a hammer broken can do no more good than a paperweight. So it loses its power and drive. A screwdriver, because of its grooves, quickens itself, ideally for what it was made for. But with worn grooves, it spins hopelessly and struggles away. And nails, they are the connecting force. They unite things together and keep it together when they're strong. But they jeopardize the integrity of its mission when it's weathered and aged. Our toolbox contains things that are given by our parents and those adult figures, and later on in high school and everything else, some of our friends. But not everything that we received is very useful and actually can be crippling for us. And so in life, we're going to need to learn how to maneuver life's course with what we've received. But in order to cut across a mountain, sometimes something with a hard, straight edge is needed. But in order to go across a rapid, you need something that is more flexible, more buoyant. If you took a regular wooden boat on a rapid, it would fall apart quickly because it doesn't give. And if you used a feather to cut through a mountain, you'd be doing it forever with no type of progress. Now, our parents giving us these qualities, these coping mechanisms, these ways to respond to the stressors in the world, we pick this up. And ideally, from our mothers, we pick up compassion and love and nurturing. But not all of us have that story that we can fall upon, or that memory to lean back on or to go to. Some of our childhoods were traumatized by divorces or by other tragic events. But we're called as adults to go back and untangle those knots, to correct those errors within us. We can't fix what happened or didn't happen, but what we can do is move forward in a healing process, in strengthening the tools that we're given, in acquiring different skill sets. And the tools that I will talk about a little bit later, have these divine, are masculine and feminine. And today we're going to talk about these feminine qualities. And in Genesis 1:27 we read, "So God created mankind in his own image, and in the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them." Because both male and female are created in the image and likeness, it goes without saying that both these qualities are within each one of us. And depending on a variety of factors, certain qualities become more dominant in our lives. In most Western societies, males and females have very specific roles they are taught to believe are inherent to that sex. How many of you, as a young child, if you're a guy, were taught, that's too girly to do, don't play with that, or don't say that, or, the parents and other adult figures, or even our friends might have called us names if we were acting out of our gender-specific roles that were given to us. Now it's not so bad, but before, a boy would be told to toughen up, don't cry. That's what girls do. Or girls would be told not to play too masculine because that's boy stuff. Or don't lift that, that's too heavy, you're a girl. It's true. I was told even in the military, there's several different instances I can think about where even then we still had these gender-specific roles that we were almost forced to just play this role in, whether we wanted to or not. I knew some guys that I was a lot stronger than, but because they had testosterone or a little bit more than I did, they were called to do different jobs, or the jobs that I could have easily have done. And you found that most of the people that were doing the service type of orientation, the service work, were females. And so it's gotten a lot better, but we're still not there just yet. So we're looking for greater examples to demonstrate these qualities that are within each one of us. All of us have that God essence and presence inside it. That's for sure. God created each one of us in the image and likeness, both male and female. And what we're called to do as adults is to bring out those qualities appropriately. It's appropriate to bring out love in a time that love is called for. It's appropriate to bring out power and strength when that is needed. But often we think because of our roles in life, we have to play one specific and we can only demonstrate that. This is untrue. The world needs everyone to embody both qualities in order to change things, to put down and lay down gender, and to pick up what God is instead. Now, we don't have to look very far for a great example of, since this is Mother's Day, a feminine aspect of God. Co-founder Myrtle Fillmore, considered the mother of unity, wrote the Letters of Myrtle Fillmore, later renamed Myrtle Fillmore's Healing Letters, which was all about making peace with our bodies, peace with our friends and family, with our memories, and with our life partner, our finances, every aspect of our lives. Thousands of people wrote into her. And because she had this compassion about her, this nurturing about her, they were eased into healing themselves, or allowing that God divine presence and essence, because that's the one that does heal, allowing that presence to permeate. There was a way that she spoke to people, that she wrote to people, that transformed, that clicked and switched something on within them. Didn't matter what their gender was. She had that power to awaken, to activate this healing presence. And she did it with the feminine aspect of divine. But there are times when a problem does need a hard-edged answer with truth. When no must mean no and your yes must mean yes. When we stand strong in truth, our answer never wavers and stands by its decree, where it doesn't worry whether a prayer is heard or even answered. It trusts and rests in knowing that the infinite is present at all times. Sometimes, though, life really just does a number on us. I'm sure within the past 2 years, you can think of an instance in your own life where you were tricked by the appearance of something that was happening that quickly called for you to take your attention off of God and on back to the problem. But that's the trick of this world. And we are called to, no matter what, at all times, to always remain single-focused with one vision towards the Creator. And that's what Myrtle did, but she did it in a way that brought comfort and reassurance. This is that one aspect, because God has many aspects. This is the one aspect of God called compassion. The mind can sometimes become so ensnared by a difficulty that it loses sight from where its help comes from. Remember that your help never comes from an outside source. Now, she wrote these letters back to individuals because what she wrote softened the intellect enough for the message to reach the heart. And when a truth can reach the heart, that's when it can do work. A message left up here stays up here and is just something you read. But once you can embody it and feel it down in the heart, then you're part of it. That truth is you, and you are that truth. And that's why she was so special to this movement. In high school, I had a coach, Miss Jenny Tolfrey, and to me, she demonstrated a very balanced use of both the feminine and the masculine. When I needed to be pushed, she knew, believe me, I was the laziest cross-country runner out there. I had natural talent. I was fast. But she knew I could do more. And I was just going off of mere talent alone. And she saw that within me, and so she pushed me. She didn't do it with the feminine aspect. She did it with the masculine. She was her energy was just very straightforward with me, very stern. And then when she knew I did my best, but I still didn't do as good as I thought I should have, she would show up differently. She knew how to balance the two. She knew what was appropriate when a certain essence should come from her. And so when I didn't do well, when I had done my best, she then showed up with compassion. And she showed up with encouragement. And with that softer side, I experienced something, and I didn't realize it at the time. And only last night, I finally realized what Coach Tolfrey gave to me. So what she gave to me was resiliency and determination. I didn't realize where that came from within me, but then I realized it was because of her. Without the firestorm that she gave me, I might not have strived for my best. And without her gentleness, I might have stayed in defeat. She helped to evolve me into the person I am today. She wasn't the sole person who did, but I haven't thought about her in a while. And suddenly it sprung to me that a lot of adults in our lives give us different tools. And so I want to thank Coach Tolfrey because really what she did put into my toolbox has been invaluable to me moving forward. So ideally in this toolbox, we have both the strong and the soft. We have this powerful presence. And then we have this compassionate composure. And when we can balance the two, and we can show up in the time of need with the appropriate God-like quality, that's when we can start transforming lives. That's when we can start healing hearts. That's when we can start changing this world. Last week, after service here, Don Farmer, who is part of Zamar, received a call. And it was an urgent call from a neighbor. His apartment complex was burning, and he had 2 fur babies there trapped inside of his apartment. We rushed there after service to find Don and Kalani, his partner, who's sitting right here, apartment complex, basically total destruction of especially the first part of the top half of the floor. What I thought was what I experienced, I'll say differently. What I experienced was something that I'd never experienced before. I experienced neighbors who had just lost everything that were in the same apartment complex coming together, showing this feminine aspect of the divine, of compassion, of comfort. And Don felt so remorseful because the fire had started in his unit, and everyone had lost all their possessions. And one of the neighbors came up to him, and he was very apologetic to her. And she grabs him and basically tells him to stop. It was just such a powerful moment where she just had him freeze. And everyone realized that what she was doing, it was just such a compassionate response to a tragic event. Him not knowing at the time that we suspected that his 2 fur babies, him and Kalani's fur babies, had perished in the fire, but we didn't find out until later. But with all of that energy and all of that tragedy happening, neighbors from everywhere turned up. We had neighbors opening their doors to allow people to use the restroom. A person came outside with a cooler with drinks for everyone, standing by while the fire inspector was determining the cause of fire. People who you would not normally think would have this motherly, nurturing instinct within them suddenly showed up with the most compassion and the most love that I've experienced in a long time. And I stood there in awe to see this comforting presence that was in the midst of this chaotic experience. And what did it do? It brought light and hope to the situation. It calmed the storm to a degree, and it extinguished the fires within of uncertainty and doubt. It felt like a family unit down there. And for 6+ hours, we stayed there, and each neighbor just compassionately held one another. We went looking for Kalani and Don's doggies, just in case they had jumped out the window. We formed search parties. It was people we didn't even know. Suddenly, we became family in that moment. We had people from the church calling in, starting a GoFundMe. Within minutes. The community, the greater community and this community showed up as the comforter, as that, what we would call that feminine energy. But it didn't matter if they were male. It didn't matter if they were female. Each one showed up because guess what? God created each one of us in the likeness and image. And so something deep down within each one sprung forth into action. It would have been tragic if somebody were to show up with a more masculine approach and said, oh, you'll rebuild tomorrow, or being very, or just unobservant of what was happening at the time. Nothing like that occurred because the God within each person knew immediately what was needed. Each person threw away their own egoic needs to focus on the whole of the community. And right, perfect action happened. And we're always talking about that in unity, about this right, perfect action. And then I got to see it demonstrated in the most beautiful and loving of ways. And then the next day, we buried Cece and Lala right there in the garden. And the community showed up again in love, in support. I apologize, Kalani. And I know, it just touched each one of us in ways that we saw God incarnate, God in action. And I give thanks for that experience because I got to see this quality that it didn't matter what was happening, what gender I was born under, that each one of us that were there got to bring forth that love. So for Mother's Day, what I'd like for you to do is take a personal inventory of what you have inside. We are only 5 weeks away from Father's Day, where we're going to learn some tools to balance the feminine and masculine. But for the next 5 weeks, let's take a healing journey together where we can bring out more of this divine feminine, compassion, love, where we can say yes to being kind and generous, where our yes means yes, where we can say to a friend in need that I can be here for you, that I can help and support you, even if it's just me lending an ear for you to talk to. This is what mother, this feminine aspect, this nurturing aspect does. It comforts us and provides that support. It's unfortunate not everybody has had that, but it's within you. If you didn't receive it as a child, it's still within you. It's just awaiting your recognition of it. It's waiting for you to express it. You don't have to be a parent to feel it, to realize it. But you're here on earth right now. And because of that, there is a divine purpose for you. When we can balance both of these energies, both of these aspects, we can always show up to a situation doing the divine right action at the time. And right now, I just invite you to close your outer eye. And we think about our own childhood, that no matter what occurred in the past, that presence of love is still within you. That anything that wishes to be released will reveal itself to you, will spring up and ask you to release it. That these next 5 weeks, we develop and cultivate the feminine divine within each one of us. We call on that presence of God right here, right now, that loves, that nurtures, that heals. We know that it abides within us, each one of us, awaiting our yes in order for it to bless. Let us take this into the silence.